In today's video, we'll be taking a look at this. It is a St. Benedict Press Douay-Rheims Bible. There, we got it to focus. And I will be comparing the dimensions of it with a St. Joseph medium-sized New American Bible. It is about the same height and width, but the St. Joseph is much thicker. And here is an Ignatius Press Revised Standard version, 2nd edition. So the RSV 2 CE is a taller book and around the same thickness. RSV 2 CE is also wider. This Douay-Rheims Bible is 8 3/4 inches tall, 5 3/4 of an inch wide, and 1 1/4 inches thick. Nice gilt edges. I found this in a used bookstore recently. It did not appear to have ever been used or opened. All the pages were still stuck together, so I had to unstick them. I think I got most of them, but otherwise new. The only thing I can't show you is the box or wrapping that it came in because it wasn't present. The cover is in genuine leather. Genuine leather is generally speaking not very good leather. If you want good leather, you want something that says top grain or full grain. Genuine does not mean good. Inside the Bible, the text is arranged in 2 columns. Each column is 53 millimeters wide. There are about 43 characters per line on average. And if you have a page that has no notes or references at the bottom and no breaks like this, you can get as many as 53 lines per column. The page dimensions are 206 by 139 millimeters, so it's not very large. That equates to 8.11 inches tall and 5.47 inches wide. Text is not line matched. Perhaps you can see that there. The line from the other page is a little bit offset. It's close here, but it's not quite on line. There's perhaps a better example here of the offset. Print appears to be fairly sharp, but not particularly dark or bold. So it's a crisp print. Margins at the top of the page are 12 to 13 inches. The inner margin can be as much as 13 millimeters. Outer margin is 14 to 16 millimeters. And if I said inches earlier for the top margin, that's 12 to 13 millimeters, not inches. The bottom margin is 11 to 14 millimeters. Font in the text. The uppercase characters are just under 9 points when I compare them to Times New Roman. 9 points is about the size of the lowercase letters as well. Line height is 3.12 millimeters, which is 8.85 points. Verse numbers are in black at the beginning of the verses. Added words are in italic font. Let's see if I can find any of those for you. Here. So we see the R, A-R-E, is in italic font there. It turns out that quotations that appear in the New Testament that are from the Old Testament are in italic font also, but I haven't found that to cause any confusion. Pronouns for deity in this translation, just as in the King James Version and in the Revised Standard Version and in the New American Bible, are not in capital letters. There are references below the text. These are in about a 6.5 point font. And then below that we have notes. So there are page bottom notes, and these are in a larger font. It's about 7.5 points tall. The paper, I measure the sheet thickness of these pages to be 35.7 micrometers. That gives me an estimated paper weight of 32.6 GSM. There is a light sheen on the surface. I think you're picking that up over here. So you may have to make adjustments between the book angle and the lamp and your eyeball to keep that sheen off the paper. The paper has a faint beige tinge. It is almost white. There is show-through, but I don't find it troublesome. You can certainly see the print from the other page here. There is print non-uniformity. If we compare page 1009 to page 1013, that will give you a sense for how extreme it is. So page 113 to your right is quite a bit darker than page 1009 on the left, and I hope it appears that way on the camera. It's certainly that way to the naked eye. And actually the non-uniformity is also present in the faint red letters that we'll look at. There are brief book introductions. They're usually about a paragraph long here, as in the book of Micah. There are book titles, center top of the page. That's not the best place to put them. That is a common place in older Bibles like this one, but it's actually better to put them out here, because if they're out here, then you can find them as you're flipping through. In fact, they put the chapter number, this is the book contents, on the inside. It would be preferable to put the page number in there and the book title and the chapter number out here, so that as you flip through the Bible, you can find your place rapidly. Very rarely after you become familiar with the Bible are you going to need to use the page number. There are chapter numbers between the chapters. So in a more modern Bible, you'll see where this large drop cap is. You'll commonly see the chapter number there. So this is an older style of doing things. There are chapter summaries in a 7.5 point italic font dividing the chapters. This chapter number is in about a 9-point font, all caps. Books of the Bible in this edition do not begin on a separate page. We may be able to see that here. So, first book of Maccabees appears at the end of Malachi. So Malachi stops, and then first Maccabees ends on the same sheet of paper. Words of Christ, as you've noticed earlier, are in red. Here the red is somewhat dark. It's not too bad. But in other places it gets quite dark, quite light. It fades, which makes it somewhat difficult to read. So it's not quite as dark as it could be through here. And it's getting a little difficult for me to read here. It's getting quite light. If we look at quotation from the Old Testament and the New Testament, you see that it is in italic font, as I mentioned earlier. At the end of the book of the Apocalypse, you find a historical index. It's called an historical and chronological index. The first part of it is to the Old Testament. And then that transitions to an index to the New Testament. Altogether, that's about 7 pages. This page here is entitled Historical Index, but we've transitioned here to a topical index. So you see a few topics, and then locations are given to points in the Bible where you can hear those topics discussed. So here under relics, you see a mention of Acts 19:11. The topical index is followed by this table of all epistles and gospels. This, of course, is an older reading that would have been done back in the 1890s. It's certainly not the modern 3-year cycle. So that's Sundays and holy days. And then you have a list of the order of the books in the Old Testament with the number of their chapters, and the same for the New Testament. I count 1, 2, 3 blank sheets or 6 blank pages, and then we come to 4 color paintings. Let's see if I can show them to you without much gloss on the page. They are shiny, so you're getting some reflection from my lamps. We have 4 of those. El Greco's Christ on the Cross. And then we have 4 color maps. They span 4 pages. They're glossy, just like the paintings are. If you look in the gutter here, this is fairly easy to see that this is a glued binding, just by that kind of rippled look to it. That's 4. Then you have heavier paper. It's a paper liner. So there's 1 more sheet, extra sheet of heavier paper. Then there's this coated paper liner. It's a glued bind text block. The Bible will not lie open in Genesis. I'll show that to you a little better. The hinge is somewhat stiff, and the fact that the binding is glued combined to make it difficult for the book to stay open. So if I get here to chapter 33 in Genesis, it's just barely able to stay open. There is 1 yellow ribbon marker. The ribbon marker is 7 millimeters wide, so it's not particularly wide. It's 30.9 centimeters long, so it is long enough to come out at the edge corner of the volume here and be useful. There are head and tail bands. They are burgundy and gold. At the beginning of the video, I showed you the burgundy cover. It has imprinted on it, or embossed here in the leather, cross with the characters C, S, P, and B. That's Latin for the cross of our Holy Father Benedict. As you come in, you can see it on the back of the front page as well as Holy Bible on the back of the cover. You have the same coated paper liner, a couple of pages of heavier paper, a presentation page, a statue of St. Peter in St. Peter's Square, Vatican City, title page, St. Benedict Press in association with Tan Books, Charlotte, North Carolina. St. Benedict and his medal. So you can pause and read that, hopefully. Family register, births, marriages, deaths, title page, Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where Tan Books are located. It's the Douay-Rheims version, printed in 1582 for the New Testament, 1609 for the Old, translated from the Latin. So not from the Greek or Hebrew, but from the Latin. This is the what we would have as the copyright page with the imprimatur and printed and bound in Canada. These are the ISBNs. I've searched the internet, and this particular edition that you're looking at now, the burgundy, is no longer available. At least I couldn't find it. One of the 2 Durahide editions is. I believe the Durahide burgundy is still available, and then the genuine leather black. So if you want the same edition in black, I believe you can find it. Those of you who have this and you've purchased it more recently, perhaps you could say in the comments whether the contents have changed or not. This particular edition seems to have been printed in about 2009. This is the preface to the 1899 edition. Preface continues to about a third of the way into the next page. We have a title page for the Old Testament. Names and orders of all the books of the Old Testament. So in 1960 and earlier, all these books would have been familiar to Catholics who were Bible readers, at least. Would not have found it confusing that there are 4 books of Kings. In your modern Bible there are only 2. That's because 1 and 2 Kings are 1st and 2nd Samuel. 3rd and 4th Kings are 1st and 2nd Kings. These paralipomena books are actually what we call chronicles now. 1st and 2nd Esdras are Ezra and Nehemiah, and so on. And the prophets are not that difficult to translate into their modern forms. And on the very next page, you are at the book of Genesis. I'm told by people who know Latin that the Douay-Rheims Bible is a fairly literal translation. I usually do show my translation continuum, but that's based on translations from the Greek, so I haven't attempted to do such a thing for the Latin. However, it is possible for me to look at the various readings in the New Testament and compare them to Greek New Testaments to see which Greek New Testament reading they are following. And I was able to do that with the Douay-Rheims Bible. This first chart shows the Douay-Rheims there as DRB in a red rectangle. And it's a scatter plot showing a percent agreement with the Nestle-Aland Greek New Testament on the y-axis, the vertical axis, and agreement with the Robinson-Pierpont Greek New Testament, which is a Byzantine text New Testament, on the x or horizontal axis. And as you see there, the Douay-Rheims Bible is sort of out in space by itself, out there in a regime with the Evangelical Heritage version, a recent Lutheran translation, and Lambs's translation from the Peshitta. Clearly, Douay-Rheims Bible is not a Byzantine text translation. By the same token, it, however, does not agree with the Nestle-Aland Greek New Testament very often. This chart shows the rate of agreement with Nestle-Aland again on the y-axis and with the Westcott and Hort Greek New Testament on the x-axis. And the thing I'd like to point out here is that the Douay-Rheims Bible disagrees with Westcott and Hort to a large extent of the time, much less than many of the modern versions do. There are groups of people, some of them King James onlyists, who like to say that the modern Westcott and Hort and modern Greek New Testaments are influenced by Rome. They are Catholic New Testaments. But this chart, I think, shows you fairly easily that the Douay-Rheims Bible is not in the same class with the Westcott and Hort Greek New Testament or with the Nestle-Aland 28th edition. The rates of agreement are less than 40% to Westcott and Hort and less than 60% to the Nestle-Aland edition. Finally, this is rates of agreement with Nestle-Aland on the y-axis, and the Tyndale House Greek New Testament. That's a recent evangelical Greek New Testament based largely on early manuscripts on the x-axis. And again, rates of agreement are not especially high with either type. Of course, you wouldn't expect the Douay-Rheims Bible to have been influenced by the Tyndale House Greek New Testament that wasn't printed until 2016. Not only that, and of course, Douay-Rheims was based on Latin, not Greek. But I just thought that was interesting and worth showing. Attempting to show you here the variation in darkness that I see in the red. So the red on the right here, we're in John's Gospel, appears to my eye to be quite a lot darker than the red on the left. I'm not sure how well you're seeing that in the camera, but it's certainly obvious to the naked eye. Here's a close-up look at the font. It's a rather standard font. It reminds me quite a lot of Times New Roman. There are no issues that I see with tracking, and the line spacing seems quite adequate. Bringing in on the left now a Douay-Rheims Bible. This is a John Murphy and Company reprint from several decades back, and you can tell it's older from the yellowed paper, but I do like the print on the left better than that in the newer edition on the right. It's darker, bolder, it's easier on my eyes. On the left now is the RSV Second Catholic edition from Ignatius Press. It does have a yellow paper. This is not yellow due to age, it's yellow due to intent. That's the kind of paper they decided to insert here. Print on the left is a bit larger, but it's a similar thin, modern, crisp print to that on the right. And now on the left, this is the St. Joseph medium-size New American Bible, Revised Edition from Catholic Book Publishing. I think it's actually easier to read, although it may be a bit smaller, similar in size, but for my eyes, the darkness of the font on the left is very helpful. It occurred to me to attempt one last comparison here. On the left is a facsimile of the original 1582 Rheims New Testament, and we're roughly in the same place. On the left, you're in Mark 15:21 through 23, and on the right, you're at the very beginning of Mark 15. However, if we zoom out, you can actually see on the right, and the soldiers led him away to the court of the palace. If we look on the left, and the soldiers led him into the court of the palace. It might be a little difficult to see there. Here we go. And the soldiers led him into the court of the palace. So you can see that right there was a change made from into away, into, and they called together the whole band. Larger font here, but I don't know if this is actually representative of the original. I know that this is the same font that was used, but I don't know if it's the same font size. So if we look at the original Rheims New Testament, we see no note there on verse 25. Down here and around verse 30, there is a note, and it is on the word "save thyself." And the note reads, "So heretics say of the Blessed Sacrament, if it be Christ, let him save himself from all injuries." So a little jab there at Protestants. Then here on the next page, I think it's about verse 34, 35, on the words "forsaken me." Zoom in a bit. There's a note in the margin here. See Matthew chapter 27:46. The blasphemous exposition of Calvin and his followers, and take heed thereof. And then there are multiple annotations here, so you had quite a lot more annotations back in the original 1582 Rheims New Testament than you have now. So here's one on verse 11 on chief priests. And then on the following page, one on verse, it looks like 15, to satisfy the people. And then on verse 46, well, we will shoot a summary and then be finished. It is a genuine leather cover, rather stiff. Nicely gilt page edges, a glued binding that only with difficulty stays open. It wants to pop closed. Even here in Galatians on the back side, it wants to close. And if we get to the Apocalypse, it wants to close itself entirely. Glued binding probably will not last very long, so there's that durability issue. The paper is reasonably opaque, but it does have a sheen to it. The print is nice and crisp, and there's only moderate variation in the darkness, but it really isn't dark enough for my eyes. I greatly prefer using my used reprint of the John Murphy and Company edition. But for me, the biggest downside is this red print. I know a lot of people like red lettering. Red lettering's only been around since the 1890s. It causes me severe eye strain and pain in trying to read, so I generally stay away from red letter editions myself. But I did get this one because it was so inexpensive in the used bookstore and essentially brand new. So I thought you might like to see it. Well, with that I will conclude the review. I appreciate you watching. The noise you might be hearing in the background is my cat scratching her cat hole. If you haven't already done so and are so inclined, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel, and thank you very much for watching.